Hello, we shall discuss on the topic biotic components. When we say biotic components, we are referring to the living components. Bio means life. So biotic component refers to the living components. So the biotic components of an ecosystem consist of the living components, and these biotic components in an ecosystem are further divided into three levels. The first is the producers, the second is the consumers, and the third is the decomposers. So let's first discuss on the producers. Producers are those living organisms that can manufacture, prepare, or synthesize their own food in the presence that can synthesize their own food. Now these producers are further classified into photoautotrophs and chemoautotrophs. Photo means light, so photo means light, auto means self, and troph means we are referring to food. So photoautotrophs are those living organisms which can synthesize their own food in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll. So these are those living organisms that bear chlorophyll in their body. So these animals, in the presence of sunlight, chlorophyll, carbon dioxide, and water, they can synthesize their own food through a process called as the photosynthesis. So some of the example of photoautotrophs are the plants, photosynthetic bacteria, and even euglena. Now, the second group of producers are the chemoautotrophs. Chemoautotrophs are those living organisms like sulfur bacteria, iron bacteria, and even the nitrifying bacteria, which derive their food components from the inorganic compounds by capturing or deriving the energy from the inorganic chemical reactions. So under producers, there are two groups, that is the photoautotrophs and the second is the chemoautotrophs. Now, next components of the biotic component is the consumers. So consumers are those living organisms which cannot synthesize or manufacture their own food, but they depend on the producers to derive their nutritional requirements. So these consumers are further divided or broadly classified into two groups again, that is herbivores and the carnivores. Now, herbivores are also called as primary consumers or the first order consumers. Herbivores are those group of animals that directly feed upon the autotrophs like plants. So some of the examples of herbivores are deer and rats. So these deer and rats form the herbivores in the forest ecosystem. Now herbivores are also called as the key industrial animals. Why? Because they convert the plant materials into animal materials. Now the second is the secondary consumers. From this secondary consumer onward, the carnivores starts. So secondary consumers are those organisms. Secondary consumers are also called as the primary carnivores because they directly feed upon the herbivores. So some of the example that is belonging to these secondary consumers or the primary carnivores are the fox, fishes, frogs, etc. Now the third is the tertiary consumers. The tertiary consumers are also called as the secondary carnivores because they feed upon the secondary consumers. So the example of the the tertiary consumers is the snake. The example is snake. Now the fourth is the tertiary, the fourth is the quaternary or the top order consumers. These are the living organisms which feeds on the tertiary and even the secondary or the primary consumers. So these are those living organisms which cannot be fed upon further by any group of living organisms. So the example of the animals that is belonging to these top order consumers or the quaternary consumers are the tiger, lion, and even the peacocks. Now the third components of the biotic components is the decomposers. Now decomposers are those living organisms. These are mostly belonging to the microorganisms. So these are those organisms that decompose or reduces the dead plants and animals into the simpler compounds and release the components, that is, and release the materials that is present in the body of the plants and animals into the atmosphere that can be further utilized by the producers. in order to synthesize their food. So this group of living organisms are also called as decomposers and or the reducers. uh, the example of the decomposers or reducers are the bacteria and fungi. So these reducers or the decomposers are also called as saprotrophs or mineralizers, as they break down the complex organic components into the simpler usable form into the environments. Now, what is the importance of these decomposers or reducers are that this group of living organisms, that is the decomposers, uh, are of great importance as they help in cleaning the environment uh, decomposing or reducing the complex body into simple forms, and then and help it and thus it help in nutrient cycling, at the same time cleaning the environments. And this help in the nutrient cycling even in the environment by returning the nutrients which are found in the soil, and these nutrients which are returned back into the soil can be used up again by the plants. So this nutrient cycling is being done mostly by the help of the decomposers. So this is all about the importance of the decomposers. So with this we complete the topic biotic components.